everyone, and welcome to a very special episode. No, it's not. This isn't going to be like late night, getting home from school. It's just a special episode of Wheel Tapping. Today, Tony and I are just decided we want to take a few minutes and kind of deep dive Kickstarter a little bit. I would say crowdfunding in general. So, Tony, how you doing today, sir?
I'm doing pretty darn good, man.
Excellent, excellent. So today, we're recording this at the end of July. So this is for August 2021. And what's kind of inspired this is going to be, you'll see in a few minutes, we've kind of had a project that's been baking in the background for, nigh on the last 3 months or so. Technically, the yeast was proofing long before that, but yeah, I'd say in full percolation mode the last couple months. And it's pretty exciting. So Tony's here to share a little more detail with you about that. I'll talk about my role. We're going to have special guest Travis Hill on. I got to sit down and have an interview with Travis because guess what? The man has a Kickstarter coming out late this year, and then he also has a publication coming out with another game. So he's going to be like tag teaming Christmas this year in a 1-2 punch of Cubrel goodness. So, wow, that was an energetic opening for me. I'm telling you, I like it.
It was. I'm ready to back that stuff now.
Yeah. Well, here's the cool thing, though. You know, one is a back, the other is not. The other's actually it's a Hollandspiel straight to print. So
cool.
So let's dive into the thick of this a little bit. What we're going to do is we're going to break up our phases because for some reason I can't live without phases. It's something I started, much to the chagrin of the train shuffling guys who felt the need to also continue a similar format. Sorry, guys. I think it's really a good structure for us to use. So we're going to kind of stick to it tonight.
Chris, our favorite kind of games are in phases. Life is in phases. It's just the natural sequence of things.
Yeah, I'm having a midlife crisis, but unfortunately I can't afford it, so it's kind of a problem. We're going to start off with the yellow phase because, you know, that's where games start. So coming up on the yellow phase, we're just going to kind of talk about generally the overview of what crowdfunding options are available in the world of 18xx games right now. And really what we kind of see is like 3 types of crowdfunding. So there's Kickstarter or crowdsource. So, you know, it's going to, whether it's Kickstarter or any GameFound or any of the other systems, there are ones where you pony up money to help somebody make their dream come to life. It's been used by a wide variety of people. It is a little expensive on the back end for the people who produce things. And, you know, I think its reputation is pretty solid. I can't say I've had any bad experiences. I don't do a ton, like maybe a couple a year. So the only recent 18xx's that really come to mind are going to be 61 and 67 from Josh over at Grand Chunk Games. Was a nice big one. And then we also had actually 18 Chesapeake was where Scott from All Aboard Games kind of got that out into the wild to kind of really see what happened. And I think that that's really interesting, right? Because Tony, that kind of really shows what the system is about. And me, this is the idea of Kickstarter is, you know, we can use it for pre-order systems, right? Which a lot of companies do. They have a big expensive game, and I know because I work in these companies, so I kind of know stuff, right? And you can't take a chance on this big expensive game, and you don't know, do I need 4,000? Do I need 8,000? Do I need 2,000? So Kickstarter is a great way to say, you need 3,000 to fulfill Kickstarter, and then you get a little extra printed. So you kind of have a really good idea of how much to print, especially if the game's not normal for you. So, you know, I think what Scott really did was he kind of took that, and what was cool was the success of Chesapeake really allowed him to kind of launch all the waves that then came after it, right? Like right. Chesapeake kind of broke the dam a little bit, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I don't know, I just feel like in general the concept is pure brilliance, right? Like it's literally crowdfunding. Let the crowd fund this, and it definitely cuts down on the risk. But hey, gives you a chance to, as consumers, to have products and services that wouldn't ordinarily make it to the market.
Exactly.
All these games have been handmade before that, right? Like from Scott anyway, right?
Right. And now we have gorgeous productions. We have, we don't just have some black and white picture of a train on the cover that somebody got some rights to and ran through Photoshop. We have some artwork now. I think that there's a lot of stuff that's kind of come with this that I'm excited about. So that, if you ask me, is kind of what it's for. And we'll come back to him when we talk about pre-orders in a second. But I think that it's really awesome to see that this option exists. So, hopefully Grand Trunk 89, it's in the works. It's going to come someday, soon, once we kind of get past some kerfuffle-y stuff. Sure. What's next? What's on the horizon? And I'm kind of excited that, we have new publishers starting as well as established ones being able to get into a more traditional model, right? The other kind of crowdfunding, and whether you want to call it that or not, it still kind of is put your money up and then we'll send you a thing, typically. And that's going to be a pre-order. And this seems to be like the people who kind of get tired of paying Kickstarter their due, or, kind of have a really good customer base that they can reach and generate buzz. One of the things people don't tell you about Kickstarter is it's a great advertising engine by itself. So, especially if you can get your project noticed and talk about it, you get caught up on a lot of people's reports about Kickstarter coming, and it kind of has this whole thing about it. You're not just paying for somebody to put you up on Kickstarter and then put up your deal and, hopefully get funded. You're paying for an unintended marketing system that kind of comes with that. And it's pretty clever. And I've heard a lot of people in the business who talk about it is, yeah, we could afford to print the game, but we can get a lot more buzz if we kickstart a game. And we might be able to make it cool. So pre-orders are kind of like when people kind of pull off Kickstarter or say, hey, like I said, I don't want to pay that money to them. I can reach 3,000 people on my email list. I have a good product. People are now starting to seek me out. There kind of comes that place where that switch kind of flips. We saw it with Capstone, with the Irish gauge, the rails, and then now coming up to the Iberian gauge. He puts those on pre-order so that, again, he can kind of gauge a little interest, and he knows how many he can keep back and then how many he wants to send out to distribution. So he kind of has a good picture of that. Not to mention, if you don't have to pay distribution and you don't have to pay an end retailer their cut, it's better for the publisher too.
Sure. Keep more of the money.
As much as I love Clay, as much as I love Scott and Josh, in the end, these things need to be profitable so that they can keep doing it, so that we can keep getting games. So
definitely. There's a limit to passion projects, right? Like you gotta, that level, it's gotta support itself.
Exactly. And I come from a place where I really feel everybody should be compensated for their time. So whether that's, energy you're putting into getting a passion project off the ground, or whether you're working for a game company demoing things, those people should be compensated. It's just kind of the way of life. So then we kind of have the weird hybrid of these two, and we'll call that the P500 system because, hey, this is reality now. We have GMT making a couple games, on track to make like 1 or 2 a year, right?
Yeah, they've done 4 XX games so far. It's kind of like pre-orders, but I'm not going to bill you until much later, right? So it's, people are signing up to basically make a soft commitment to purchase the game.
Mm-hmm.
And when they get to 500 games, they begin the pipeline of producing that game. And it might be a while before that game actually gets the artwork done and blah 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 blah, printed, shipped, and So it might be a while before you actually get billed for that pre-order.
Yeah, and it's easy to pre-order things twice and then get double billed because you totally forgot you did it before.
Yep.
So
I may have ordered 248s. I'm not sure.
I definitely ordered 246s.
Whatever. I'll just give one the tracks, right?
There you go.
I'll keep one and I'll put one in the tracks library.
And where the 500 comes from is when the system was originally started, right? Like GMT has all these games that they want to produce, but they may not know in which order to produce them or focus on them, right? So the 500 says, hey, when these games hit 500 people signing up for them and committing to it, it'll flip the switch to start the process. Now, whether it's literally 500 or it's up to 750 or things like it's definitely going a little higher before they're actually flipping the switch these days. But that's its origin, and that's the rough conception that once you have that much interest, they hit print.
It could be also like crowd prioritization, even.
Yeah.
You know, like, okay, we have 3,000 for this. Let's push the button.
Right.
Let's push the button a long time ago, actually, but yeah.
Right. So, it kind of helps them manage their queue, I think is the best way to kind of put that. Yeah. So all great ways to get your games. I'm excited to see, we've seen some like 18DO was, one that was kickstarted recently. Lonnie does a few on there. So it's interesting to see him use that. And I think it's helpful too for international orders because he might not know the market over here as well or how to get the games over here. So the Kickstarter allows him to kind of get those games to us. So I remember when Czech, CZ came out, it was like I could actually get my hands on it because of that.
Yeah. Yeah, the Kickstarter does have some partnerships, I guess, that you can take advantage of, right, to help with distribution and things like that. So it's a pretty rich tool set.
Yeah, and it's definitely cool, and it's one that I'm mildly familiar with, and Tony is getting more familiar with because we kind of talked about the processes and everything's available. And trust me, this is by far not an exhaustive list. These are probably the three biggest ones, right? The project we kind of want to highlight is the one that should be launching. If you hear this the day it drops in a couple days, if that, on August 3rd, correct?
August 3rd.
Yeah, in 2021. So it's kind of exciting. So let's move on to the green phase where we talk about MAINLINE. 20,000 feet view. What is MAINLINE?
What is MAINLINE? MAINLINE is a semi-annual magazine produced by Trax that will bring what we think is a unique mixture of historical information and magazine games to the railroad gaming community.
Awesome. So, I mean, and it's going to be digital only, right? Like nobody does physical things anymore.
No, it's both, right? Like, here, I'm actually holding one.
Look at that. That's sexy.
This is it. This is real. It's the actual magazine here, because it's ready to go, right? But we wanted to order some production proofs so that we can touch the quality and things like that. So it will most definitely be a physical version as well as a digital version.
That's awesome. So you can get a physical copy, especially if you're in most commonly shipped territories. But if you live somewhere where shipping is not an option for you, you can most certainly download it and get all the goodies because the articles are great, and stuff is awesome. But, you guys like stuff. So there's definitely lots of goodies in here. So why don't you tell me a little bit about this, Tony? I kind of know the story because I was there. Yes,
you are.
So, what inspired this?
The art director on the project, so yes, you know a little bit about this project.
I know stuff.
You know stuff. Yeah, the inspiration is actually tied to wheel tapping a bit, and I mainly blame Nick because we were talking about 18 Los Angeles one day, on wheel tapping, the three of us, right? And then after that, recording session was ended, the three of us were just shooting the bull. We were talking about different games and a magazine and things like that. And Nick kind of pushed this forward, basically. So we rewarded him / punished him by making him editor-in-chief of.
Sure. And the other interesting story, and if you've been following Trax on Twitter, you've definitely seen, some little teases been coming out lately. And then probably around the time this was released, the video that kind of really helps dive into the depth of what went on behind the scenes and its genesis. But what I like is that LA came out of wanting to be that magazine game from the start. And it was just awesome because, Nick loves it. I mean, it was one of his top 5, if not the top 5. And, wanted to see this get distributed. And I think that this is a great tool for that.
It is. And it is a passion project, though.
Sure.
It's for us and our friends to have a good time and do a project that's a lot of fun, that could, possibly bring some happiness to the community as well. And at the same time, try to make a little money for the company treasury of Trax to just keep Trax rolling with conventions, other little projects like this, that kind of thing. Hey, April 2022 Trax is going to be a blowout.
Yeah. So save some dates. What are the dates on that, Tony? So that people can mark it off in the calendar right now.
Sorry. And one of the last 2 weekends of April. Don't know which one yet.
I knew that was the answer. That's why I kind of goaded you a little bit. So save the end of April. Just save the whole month. Plan on being in Denver at some point, and you won't regret it. And it's a beautiful town. And Southwest has a hub there. It's, hey, I know this from experience.
Do some spring skiing with Mike. Then we play train games.
Yeah, I have a feeling that's my plan. Definitely. Definitely. I'm kind of easy to read. All right, Tony. So what is the overall plan? Okay, this is great. This is an issue. You got some stuff in it, but
sure.
You're not one to do something small.
Well, but that's kind of part of the point, though, right? It's one thing for Nick to say, "Hey, let's do a magazine," and for me and Mike to go, "That sounds good." Another thing to actually do it.
Sure.
So, so we are keeping it smallish, if you will. There are 32 pages in the magazine, so it's not, a 100-page magazine. It also each issue will have a thematic guiding theme, and this one is the Hiawathas. Where am I on the camera? Here I am.
Perfect.
The Hiawathas, which are the Milwaukee Road's very famous trains from the 1930s. And so that focusing concept is a tool we're using to help us not bite off more than we can chew, right? And channel all of our ideas and creativity into that theme so that we don't overexceed our own capacity to get this work done, right?
Right. Because I think what's kind of important is that for you, this isn't a one-off. The hope is to do this semi-annually. So
yeah, I it's stronger than a hope. We're gonna do it. For example, for this issue about the Milwaukee Road Hiawathas, we partnered with the Milwaukee Road Historical Association, and they provided us with the historical content and photographs that are in here, including this really cool cover image and stuff. And so that on one hand, right, hey, we're serious about the history of this stuff too, right? Yes, we're gamers and want to play games and have fun. We're also interested in the history of this, and using such an association as the Milwaukee Road Historical Association. It's a big help for us because we're at best amateur historians, right? These guys do it for a living. But we have already started working on the next issue. That's going to be early next year. Reaching out, it's going to be about the Union Pacific. So we're making contacts at the Council Bluffs Museum. We've got some other idea. So it's not going to be a hope. This is going to happen. Right? We're gonna do, unless the marketplace says we don't want this magazine by virtue of not backing it on Kickstarter. This is going to happen. It's going to be a semi-annual.
That's awesome. So and with that the plan to keep the quality high means you need to keep it manageable, because right, it's like a band. Okay, the way I like to talk a lot about the sophomore album with the band, right? You get the freshman album and it's fabulous, but they've had 10 years whatever of grinding and writing and working and really putting their heart and their passion and their love into that first thing, and it's been curated over years of playing in dive bars with crappy smoke and music. And the problem with that is that when you need to repeat that, you can't, because now you only have a year until your next album needs to come out, and now you have to cram what you just spent 10 years doing into 12 months, if not less, because you have to actually get it recorded and get in the studio. So we want to make sure,
right, the producers want you on the road to support the album, right? So that's when you start getting songs about people who hate being on the road, and you get that kind of garbage, which I hate, like somebody whining about how hard their life is. Sorry, I'm not buying it. Like, I just don't get it. So it's kind of the same thing. We kind of hold ourselves to a nice maintainable line. I'm not saying hold us back, but saying we have 6 games in our brains, and rather than try and like pack this full of all those different editions, if we make 4 good ones, that leaves us 2 in the hole for next one, and then we can kind of keep pushing it forward a little bit. So sustainable pace.
Exactly. Don't want to rush out of the gate and just kind of be awesome up front. Like, we're just going to be awesome all the time instead. So let's move on to kind of, briefly telling us, again, follow Tracks on Twitter to kind of see what's going on. Check out the page. We're not going to give you everything. This isn't a commercial, but I would kind of like to let our people understand a little bit what is to be expected when they open this magazine. Like, what are the contents going to be? What's going to be in there?
For sure. Well, as mentioned, there's going to be some historical information on the 5 Hiawatha trains. They're very important trains in the history of railroading. Don't want to give away too much, but just as a taste, the Milwaukee Road's streamlined steam-powered trains literally blew away the competition on the all-important Chicago to Minneapolis-St. Paul route, and the Hiawathas became an overnight commercial success. And that success and that cool streamlining and everything, in so many ways represents a symbol to me of the golden age of railroading, and also a tragic victim of the decline. It's pretty interesting stuff. Of course, the magazine, we're gonna have a tradition in the magazine, and that is going to be that the back cover, and I'll hold it up here again. Where is it? Right there. The back cover is going to be a railroad poster that is a tribute to the golden age of railroads, when they had all those fancy travel posters, travel by train, done by that man right there, Chris Whitman. So Chris is a part of that mainline tradition now. Let's see. Yeah, games, right? So there's going to be magazine games. There's 4 magazine games in this issue. We call them magazine games because they are based upon a different game, right? Like there is going to be an 1846 variant. So cool. Get your copy of 1846 because you're going to need the trains and the tiles and stuff. And here's a map, and here's some MacGuffin rules, right? So it's, I may use the word Winsome-esque, right? They have a similar strategy with that. So there's 4 games in this. There's a 1817 game, an 1846 game, an 1830 game, and there's a Cube Rails game that you'd use your copy of Irish Gauge to play. The magazine itself, within those 32 pages, is going to have the rules differences. And printed separately will be, on 11 by 17 pages, will be the maps and things like that. In fact, I even have a example of that right here. So, for example, this is one of the 11 by 17 pages for 18 Hiawatha, and the other, there'll be another one, right? There'll be actually 5 11 by 17s that'll be packaged separately with the magazine like this. So you don't have to tear up your magazine. The magazine just has the rules in it, and then all the other stuff you need besides an actual copy of the different game is going to be provided for you separately. This is all, 110 pound, beautiful quality stuff.
So definitely one of the reasons, if you are on the fence whether why should I get the print, why should I get the PDF, those maps, this is my first time seeing them. That's gorgeous. I love that it's on that nice heavy paper. You can choose to mount it or not, but that's pretty good stock. I think you can use that as is.
Look, the 18 Milwaukee's on the other side. Yeah.
Sweet.
Flatten this out, lay it down. It's wonderful.
Yeah. That's impressive. I'm excited. Even more so. I haven't seen that yet. So good stuff.
But we ordered all these things, right? Like I said, the magazines are done. We wanted to touch the quality and the materials and make the right choices and stuff, right? Because it's gonna here's my shirt, right? Tracks. It's gonna have this brand on it, and we care about that brand, right? And we don't want sloppy quality paper and cheap feeling stuff going out there.
Definitely not.
We ordered a few things of everything. Then after the Kickstarter with a successful campaign, hopefully, we can order a whole lot more.
Awesome. So what is the Kickstarter plan? So we already said it launches on August 3rd.
August 3rd. It's going to be a 21-day campaign, and we have our U.S. printer already picked out. That's where we got our samples from. The magazine's in the can, so as soon as humanly possible, when the campaign ends, we're going to push all the print buttons and get everything in the pipeline going out.
Awesome.
It is going to be the only time, right, that we are planning on printing Volume 1, Issue 1. So if you are interested in the campaign, this would be the time to get it. Naturally, we are going to print a few extras. We can hand out at Tracks Convention as door prizes and things like that. Other little gifting opportunities.
Kind of reminds me vaguely of an SNCF map somebody in the room made a little while ago, once upon a time.
Way back then. The physical version we will be able to send it to you if you live in the US, Canada, Australia, the EU, or the UK. And the price of the shipping is included in the price of the magazine. There's no extra things to worry about.
Cool.
And that's pretty much what the Kickstarter is going to be like. Except we do have a collector's edition that we're doing too, which is going to be at a very special reward level, which is stupidly high, of course. But it's really just for if you feel like you really want to put some financial support behind Tracks and behind the project, it's something you can do.
Right. So you're going to buy a share from the IPO instead of from the market.
From an IPO. Yeah. That's right. And and capitalize the company treasury. And as a reward for such special support, we're going to try to make it meaningful. And it's going to be a special collector's edition. It's going to say collector's edition. It'll have gloss cover, slightly thicker paper on the inside. It'll have 4 more pages of content, another article and some other stuff. And it'll have 2 more magazine games, one a cube game and one roll and write.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So, even better, even better. So a good thing gets better. Awesome.
We hope so.
Yeah. So why would somebody want to do this? Why on earth? I mean, you already gave me one very good and compelling reason, and that is this is kind of a one-time deal. Like it's not going to get printed again, which means, if you get the PDF and you all of a sudden are like bummed you didn't get the map, in short time, you may very well be out of luck. So, if that's something you even remotely might want, and the full thing, you do a good job of disclosing what exactly is included. So for instance, if you say, well, I don't want to get it because I don't know what games you expect me to have in my collection to play these other games. But if you have 3 of the 4 games, it might be a great value for you. So,
yeah.
And
1846 and 1830 in particular, both of those games are
Irish Gauge too.
Very widely owned. And right, and now with Capstone doing Irish Gauge, and even 1817, which at one point in time could have been considered a rare game, it's mass produced now.
Yep.
So
exactly.
So I think 2 more reasons come into my head about why someone would be interested in backing the project. Number one, and first and foremost, is because you like the idea, you like the concept, right? It physical magazine in this digital age that I can touch
right.
and feel and smell and flip the pages on. It's made from great materials. It's got some historical content. If the idea appeals to you, to me, that's the most appealing. The second reason is just because you feel like supporting tracks. You like what we're trying to do, which is obviously host a premier 18XX convention every year here in Denver. And, as you can see, we're dipping our toes into the pool of other projects, magazine, so if you just want to support us for those things that we're doing, that could be another excellent reason.
Awesome. Well, that's great. I'm super excited. I can't wait to see. I'll be on vacation when this launches, so I'll be excited to come back and see where everything is sitting. And I will say, is it narcissistic that I printed the poster for the back cover in like 20 by 30 and it looks awesome? It's pretty cool.
No, I intend to do the same thing, and the poster will also be available as a digital, right? So when you buy the physical, you also will get the digital.
Right.
You get them both, but that includes this poster. You can also get that blown up big because it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I have to say I'm looking at it right now because it's in my media room, and I'm like, it's kind of cool because it looks like something you'd see on a bus stop or something back in the 30s.
Chris, I'm imagining like next Christmas we're 3 issues in, and in my game room I have 3 of them on the wall. I can't wait for that.
I'm pretty. It was super fun to do, and I already have in my brain what Union Pacific is going to look like, and I'm probably going to play with it on the trip because I'll bring my iPad along. Great. Well, there was another person you brought in. You mentioned myself, Mike, and Nick, but you also kind of had a 5th person playing along, and helping us out a little bit with the project, and that's Mr. Travis Hill. So I got to sit down with Travis and have an interview. Unfortunately, due to timing and scheduling, I had to do it by myself, and due to computers being butts. I also, my camera decided it didn't want to work, and in fact, right now at this moment, if you see my picture on the screen, I'm impressed with myself. But yeah, needless to say, bad time for graphics cards to go out. I'll just leave it at that. So I got to sit down with Travis. So what I did was I recorded our interview. If you're listening to it on the podcast, you won't even know. But if you're listening to the video, you won't see me, even though I actually participated and I was there. So let's just take a few moments and listen to that interview, because I like Travis is a good dude, and he was pleasure to talk to. So let's bring on the brown phase, or the russet. We can also call it the russet phase. I'm here with Travis Hill. You may know him from several projects, but most currently he's been helping us on the MAINLINE magazine, and he's been kind of helping guide it, because you've done some stuff like that before, Travis, right?
Yes. People might know me from like rulebook editing and proofreading and stuff like that, but the guys came and reached out to me just as like consultation work,
Right.
Hey, you've done Kickstarters before, you've made things on your own and sent it out. How does that work out?
Awesome. And you've published some magazines, so it's not like it's completely out of the woodwork. So anyway, this lovely person spending some time with us is Travis. Travis, what brings you into an 18XX podcast? What chops you got?
Oh goodness. I have some on a shelf over here. That counts, right? So
absolutely.
I just, I do a lot of weird stuff. I like to explain it to people that I do two wildly different things in the board game world or in the tabletop world. I design independent role-playing games. I like weird, small form, kind of quirky, interesting themes, self-reflective role-playing games. I like to design those because those are personal and they're interesting and they're fun. But then sometimes I need a break from those. And so then I make cube rails games on the opposite end of the spectrum, which involves nothing personal from me aside from just kind of playing around with systems and how things work out and just the best way to get from point A to point B and flesh everything out. So, so this kind of, I guess that's why you asked me to be on here.
Yeah, you have such a interesting like history with the train game genre, right? Like you definitely are a person who enjoys heavier games. You and I kind of met via many routes, but Capstone games, especially when they were heavy game focused, was a main way in. And you're sitting in front of a Calyx and you have a whole cube dedicated to Winsome clamshells. So, I salute that.
They spill out, next to it even.
Excellent. That's impressive because, as somebody who has, I hate to say, I might lose some cred. I have no clamshell Winsome games at all. So I kind of feel bad.
Don't feel bad.
I'll tell you what I have, though. I have a tackle box full of multicolored cubes, so I'm ready if I have any Winsome games. So
yeah, there it is. Easy. It's a problem. I mean, like, what's nice about it is that I can have 25 or 30 games like in a cube.
Right.
So that's really nice because it does save space. But I mean, especially now in the secondhand market, I mean, it's ludicrous. Like, it has to be at this point. I have all of the ones that I want,
right?
Mostly, and so I have to really, really want one to buy one on the secondhand market now, or it has to be just kind of one of those that's like, what? I bet it's probably not good, but it's always been one of those that you hear about, and so maybe I'll pick it up, But I have most of the ones that typically go for a whole lot of money on the BGG marketplace. I have most of those by this point.
Yeah, it just it's a whole subculture that just kind of, it's impressive and it's scary both at exactly the same time.
It is.
So
you and I were talking. Well, you and I were talking before the show, and fortunately, both of us have friends who have a larger collection than us. So while it looks like I have a lot, my really good friend Marcus has literally every single one except one. I don't know which one he's missing, but he owns every Winsome game in either the clamshell or the tube that a lot of them used to come in. He owns all of them, but the one that he's missing, and I can't remember what it is, but he's been searching high and low for it.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's just great. The other reason we kind of brought you on is you kind of succeeded in getting, and it's almost like a hybrid between 18XX and the Cube Rails into a single deck card game called Card Rails. Now, what was the genesis? Because I remember when I ordered this, like the first time I tried to get it, I had to get a print and play because I couldn't get a physical copy. What was the deal with that?
Yeah, so I made a lot of people angry. I really
I wasn't
did.
angry. I just want for the record. I was just like, oh,
I'm appreciating
sad.
that. Yeah, sure. So what happened was I had been toying with the idea of minimizing a Cube Rails game, which is silly because let's just be real honest. I mean, there are already minimal components anyways, and so I was thinking, well, what are ways that I could make it even smaller? Is kind of what it was. And since I had made all of these RPG zines, I had actually by that point already finalized designs on 2 fully fleshed out Cube Rails, like big box Cube Rails titles, right? And I had probably about 3 or 4 that were just kind of like in mid stages of designs in some other place. I was thinking, well, what else can I do? A friend of mine reached out to me and said, hey, Travis, Kickstarter in January does a Make 100 campaign. And the idea is that you make 100 copies of something. For a lot of like first-time Kickstarter creators, it's a great intro into the Kickstarter world because you're not overexerting yourself. You're not blowing things out of the water. You're just like, you know what? I'm going to set a very modest goal, do a very modest thing, and I'm going to make 100 copies of something. Now, a lot of people kind of play with that. They'll make like a standard version of a game or a standard version of a thing because, this is Kickstarter, so it's across everything, right? So somebody will make, they'll make fancy mugs, but then 100 of those fancy mugs, they'll charge people twice the amount for, and they'll be like custom, inlaid ceramic, whatever it is, right? So So that's what a lot of Kickstarter creators do. I used it as a way to try to design and put out a game in a small package. I was really heavily influenced by John Cloudis in Small Box Games. He put out like a lot of like the 2-player games like The North, and he just recently came out with like Pocket Galapagos, which is this solo game. It's phenomenal. But he does everything through drive-through cards. You pre-order on his site. It's just a deck of cards, and then it just comes out, and then that's it. And I was really heavily influenced by that because I thought I could do that. That's not hard, Right. And so then I thought, well, how ridiculous would it be to have a Cube Rails game in a deck of cards? And so through the process, I just start kind of tinkering and iterating, and I go, well, my first thought with any Cube Rails game, no joke, is it point to point or is it hexes? Because that's where I always begin, point to point or hexes, and then I go, okay, it's point to point is just garbage trying to figure out on cards and make it work out. So why don't I make it hexes? And then once I found out how the hexes work, then the rest of it is just tinkering. Let's move this here, move this here, move this here. How do I make it more interesting? How do I have a timer? All those like design decisions just kind of come out obviously through play testing and iteration and whatnot. But the entire thing was, how can I have a realistic Cube Rails experience in a deck of cards? And I also thought it would be good because it kind of pulls back the mystique for Cube Rails games. It didn't come with little wooden trains. Like I love Capstone's productions of stuff, but sometimes people still look at it and go, ooh, that's an economic game because there are literally trains in there. And so maybe I don't want to do that. Even though Tool is a master at graphic design and layout and art and everything, still there's some hesitation. And it might be because it's in a box and people conflate Cube Rails and 18XX games and whatnot. So I was like, you know what? I was going to try something totally different. I'm going to make a 20 to 30 minute filler Cube Rails game that you can carry around in your bag. And it's super easy to get to the table, and why not? And so I made card rails, and I limited it to 100 people. I limited it to the United States only. And as I said, there were a lot of people who were upset with me, including some very prominent Kickstarter content creators who thought that I was doing a disservice to myself. But I was in graduate school. I had just started graduate school. I was in public education during COVID, and so I knew I didn't want to try and just let this get blown out of the water. I wanted to make sure that I was going to actually be able to do it myself. And I'm glad I limited it to 100 copies, because it is not fun sorting 12,000 cubes. It's not.
No.
Like John Bohr of Winsome, I understand why he decided to retire, right? I mean, he kind of like quasi-retired because he's still making maps, still just came out with Italian railroads, stuff like that, right?
Right,
so
but he's not on the, I have to show up at Essen with X amount of games every time.
No, and I understand why, man. That is brutal. That is not a fun time just sitting there going, okay, and cubes, because I'm counting, right? Counting by pairs, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
and
6.
You also have to think that there's a point in time where you've kind of gotten all of what you want to say in that sphere out.
Yeah.
Right? Like at a point when you kind of get done with your arguments, you're kind of like, well, I can keep adding to this just because people want it, or I can just I can be done with it and do what I want when I want. So I can appreciate that.
Exactly. You're not having forced production.
Yeah. I also think it's funny that you say like people are scared of Cube Rails, but I would argue a lot of people have probably played a Cube Rail game. They just don't know it. There's a lot of titles, like for instance, Transamerica. I think Crayon Rail games are even more of a, I don't want to say like culty subgenre, because that's a really bad way to say it. But I'm like, it's almost like a subsection.
It's a niche.
It is a super niche, and I'm like, but Transamerica came out of that, right? And it's like, I think we've played a lot of those games, Paris Connection, and I think a lot of people can see that the system's really fun. I just think they get turned off by, the old school craft paper shares and cubes, and then they kind of, that's not, the same arguments they have against 18XX in the old days, I would argue now. But
my friends who, I don't have anybody, that sounds bad, I don't have anybody local who plays train games with me. That's a lie. I have one. I have like a convert, and then like a convert and a half, and then I have like reluctant players, So like as of the time of this recording, my birthday is actually in a week, in a couple days, and so my friends are going to come over, and I've already told them it's train games, and you don't have a choice. Like we'll play one or two other things, but really we're just going to be playing some train games. I have a couple new games. I have a couple new card rails titles that I've been tinkering with that I actually have physical copies of, and then I have all these blasted train games that I have. Come on, y'all, we're gonna play some of them. But one of them, one of my friends, really good friend, he says, "Oh, it's that MS Paint game." Okay, sure. Let's play the MS Paint title again, because it just looks like the MS Paint, and there's the map and the whatever, and so it's fun, but it is what it is.
So what kind of possessed you to turn the corner and say, all right, I can design Cube Rail games? You were just doing it for fun? Like, I remember playing prototypes with you many times during especially the early part of the pandemic. It was great. You're like, what are you playing now? It's like, what are you designing? And I found them to be a lot of, right? I found them to be a lot of fun. So what kind of made you say, hey, wait a second, I think I have a game here we can publish? What made you kind of turn that corner?
That's a really interesting question. I think a lot of what happened during quarantine. Let me take a step back. So about October or November of 2019. Golly, that feels like forever ago. October or November of 2019, I had started designing a Cube Rails game, and I thought, well, I love these games. Why don't I just try my hand at it?
Mhm.
And so I just kind of thought, what are the best parts of Cube Rails games that I love? I like, my favorites are point to point maps. Um, I like I like auctions and share valuation and just the typical stuff. And so I thought, well, why don't I just kind of tinker around and try and design a Cube Rails game. And so I did. I played it. I play tested it at BGG Con. Got a lot of really, really good feedback. Um, and I was really excited about it. And then COVID hit, and I wasn't able to play it anymore. And so I found a group of people who, through Twitter, who they were playing Cube Rails titles on Monday nights. They had a Discord channel just for them. It was actually like a local group of friends, and they had reached out to a
Right.
couple of people. And one of them said, "Hey, Travis, if you ever want to play test any of your games, we would love to have you in there." So I learned Tabletop Simulator, like most other board game designers. I learned Tabletop Simulator. I learned how to do all the stuff, and then I imported one game, which is called Westward Rails. I was
Mhm.
about to say I imported West Coast, Best Coast. That's what it used to be called. Um, but um, but I imported Westward Rails in there, and was able to play it a few times and got even better feedback and train. It was at that 95% stage of the game design, right? So it's like it
Mhm.
was mostly there, and there were just some things that were still a little funky, and kind of worked that out, played it with this group of people. And then I realized, hey, I have some time now because of quarantine, can't do much of anything, so why not tinker with game design some more? And so I started playing with game design some more, and started filling out. I have the butt end of a design journal over here, that like the back half of it, probably the last like 20 or 30 pages, is all Cube Rails titles. Um,
Nice.
and figured out systems, right? I figured out how to make hex maps quickly. I
Mhm.
figured out how to make point-to-point maps quickly. I photoshopped out shares that could be easily used. Just like the things that you do whenever you're trying to make all this, when you're
Right.
trying to do design stuff and trying to iterate quickly. And Tabletop Simulator was great for that, because I would make these games, and then I would just port them in, and then on Monday I knew I had a group of people who we would play a couple games of stuff, and then I would say, "Hey, I need a couple people to subject some train game stuff to," and they would go, "Sure." There was always 2 or 3 or 4 other people who wanted to sit down and play something that I made, even if it only lasted 15 minutes and was hot garbage. And I was like, okay, let's just shut this down. We'll come back to it later. And they were always helpful and always willing to just kind of sit down and play games with me. So through that process, I lead up to answer your question this way, because in that process, some other friends got into Tabletop Simulator, including Amabel from Hollandspiel, right? Designer of
Mhm.
Irish Gauge, Iberian Gauge, Northern Pacific, all of those titles. And so she came in, and she started getting into Tabletop Simulator as well. And so at one point she goes, "Hey, I would like to play this Westward Rails game." And I went, "Sure." And I had no, it wasn't like I was pitching it to her to be published by Hollandspiel. But that's what ended up happening, right? At the end of everything, she had talked with Mary, and they both said, "Hey, we would like to publish Westward Rails for you." And I went, "That's incredible," And so, it at towards the end of this year, 2021, in November, that's when it's going to come out. But in that process, I started working on Union Station. And Union Station shares some DNA with Westward Rails, because designers are weird, and we tend to, design in one big vein and then move over to a next vein and move over to a next vein. But really, what happened was that I took some inspiration that I had done with Westward Rails and kind of shifted it over into Union Station, because I went, "Hey, this will be fun. This lets me explore an entirely different thing over here." And then I tinkered with it and played it and tinkered with it and played it. And then some good friends of mine, Daniel and Tony from New Mill Industries, they were all trying to do like weird small box quirky stuff. And they said, hey, we would like to publish a Cube Rails game. And I went, okay, cool, do it. And so here we are. And neither one of them are like Cube Rails guys, you know, like
Right.
I taught them Irish Gauge at BGG Con the November before the shutdown happened, right? And so like they still hadn't played a lot of Cube Rails games. Daniel's starting to get into it a little more, but it's just like they're not like what we do, a traditional train gamer, and they're not like a traditional train game publisher or whatever. But what I love about it is that they like to do kind of fun, weird, quirky stuff. And so Union Station is kind of a quirky Cube Rails game. And so that's why I was like, yeah, go for it, do it. And so they're going to put it out on Kickstarter sometime in October, and there we go. Union Station.
So you got like 2 things coming before the year's out. That's amazing.
I do. I told Amabel and Daniel that I was going to write design journal entries for both of them,
right?
Because people are going to be like, the weird thing is that someone could back Union Station on Kickstarter in October, and then in November, Westward Rails comes out from Hollandspiel, and then they get Westward Rails and Union Station like right around the same time. And the way, because New Mill is really quick, like they normally send out Kickstarter rewards like within 2 or 3 months.
Okay.
They have a super fast turnaround. Like everything's already done for Union Station. Like they've already done all the proofs and all the layout and everything. So that's like the only thing they have to do is like put the rule book into layout, and that's it. And so it's really kind of fun because like I'm going to have all this happening at the same time. So on me, I'm sitting here going, well, I need to make sure that people understand the differences between the games, because there is some shared DNA beyond just the fact that they're Cube Rails games. There's
Right.
some shared DNA and mechanisms in it, but like the way the games play out are
Sure.
wildly different.
Interesting. And of course, if anybody follows you, they also know you're going for your doctorate. So it's not like you have anything
Yes.
better to do with your time than support all that stuff. You went from having a lot of free time to none whatsoever, right?
Well, what happened is I went from doing a whole lot of rulebook editing to a lot of reading books.
Yeah.
So it's fun. I only complain because I'm in the middle of a 5-week class that could easily be a 16-week full semester class.
Yeah. And you're underlining
yeah.
things for a completely different reason now. So
Yes. I showed this to you earlier, but the book that I'm currently reading is G.N. Ormrod's Human Learning. It's an educational psychology book, and there's just my notes, and I'm about halfway through it. And so
it's about half an inch thick, probably 500 pages or so.
I mean, it is 700 pages.
Yeah.
Just shy of it. It's a big
I
one.
have to go through, I have to read through a medical text for my ski patrolling days, and it's about that big. And I'm like, and so I recognize all the thumb tabs and everything because, yeah. So I get it. It's a lot of work. So it sounds exciting. It's a good thing you like a lot of coffee, and that's important to you because you're going to need it as you keep busy. So this is going to be an awesome second half of the year. I'm super excited for this, and I can't wait to see, because hopefully you're not done yet. I have a feeling if there's still a bunch of pages in that notebook, there's still more to come. And yes, we're getting reprints of a lot of games, but it's also great to see, I don't want to say you're fully picking up the mantle of, building Cube Rails by any means, but, it's nice to see that, it's not dead. Not dead yet.
And that's actually very true. And because I think part of the impetus for me to start working on Cube Rails titles was because I really wanted to, I wanted to explore. I wanted to explore and I wanted to have fun. But then the other part of it was that there really wasn't anyone. I mean, Amabel is putting out like one Cube Rails title a year through Hollandspiel.
Right.
Clay in Capstone are doing a fantastic job of reprinting. Rio Grande is doing a great job of reprinting. But those are reprints. There's still no one new. And so it's really Amabel doing her thing. Robin David put out Loose on Rails on Kickstarter a few months back, and that went really well. But really, there's not a lot out there. And I'm not saying that I need to be the person to carry on, as you said, the Cube Rails mantle. Whenever John Bohr retired, it was really funny because for some reason, I was part of some conversation that people either on Twitter or on a Slack channel or whatever were tagging me, and they were like, "Well, Travis, you're going to do it next, right?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not going to do it next." I did one round of 100 orders of card rails, and that was enough. That was enough for me to not. And so many people were upset about the card rails, right? So I opened up pre-orders later on, and I had like almost 200 orders, and it was a lot. It was a lot of work just to make that happen. So whenever people were like, "Oh, you're going to take on the mantle," here's the funny thing about Cube Rails titles. Some are fantastic. Some are just fine. And some are really not good. If you look at all of the Cube Rails titles on BGG, most of them are rated like a 6. Then you have Amabel's titles. Then you have the quintessential Chicago Express.
Right.
And even like Paris Connection, which is one of my favorites, is still rated pretty low. And so it's really interesting because there's this, oh man, I'm going to say this. There's this mystique about Cube Rails titles that they're just like this thing, and that they have to just make your mind explode, and they're going to be amazing and all this other stuff. But if you look at like the actual mean and the deviation, the standard deviation between people's ratings on here, they don't really have a good rap. Like they just don't. And that's nothing bad about them, but it's just funny because there's a disparity between what people think whenever they feel Cube Rails versus what happens whenever they actually play it. And I think a lot of it is because of what John Bohr did with Winsome, and just create this super small club of, and there's nothing wrong with it. And I'm not saying that any of his games are garbage necessarily, but it's just he created a club because he was able to be selective in the people that he allowed in and how he did stuff. And so because of that model, I mean, why not run with it? And so people like me who own Cube Rails games, we just go, "Oh, but look what I own," and the normal board gamer looks at it and goes, "What are you doing? Yeah, that's weird."
Exactly. It's definitely interesting. I think there's kind of a couple classes, because I think you have like Iberian Gauge, which is going to be closer to the 18XX side. Like it definitely has a lot. It has the three, right? The stocks, the companies, and the trackline. It has all those components. Yes. And then you have kind of the other end, which is like, let's call it Paris Connection, kind of like way down in Northern Pacific, would be in that super simple, quick playing, play it again. I'm waiting for my 18XX game to start. Somebody has to go bankrupt. I got half an hour. Like, I think there's a lot that kind of fit in that little timeline, right? Yeah. And then you kind of have all the rest that kind of live in that 45, 60 minute, life. And I think that's where we're seeing all the love. Like, I played GMO and I'm like, oh, somebody needs to reprint this. And then sure enough, Rio Grande comes out with it.
It's good. I love it.
And I can see that because there's some of that love in Union Station. I can kind of see how you kind of worked it a little bit. It makes sense.
Have you played Erie Railroad before?
I don't think I have.
Nope. Okay. Erie Railroad is a weird Winsome title because it's not a Cube Rails game. There are no cubes. There's no track lane or whatever. It's a pure 100% auction game. And I'm not going to explain the rules, but let me tell you why people don't like it. Is because it is 30 shares, it's 30 cards that are double sided. They're blank on one side, and then on the reverse they have two different companies on there, one at the top, one at the bottom, and they're face down and they're shuffled together. And so you can already tell that they come out randomly, and people don't like that.
Sure.
And makes sense, sure, right? But Erie Railroad is just wild. I love that game because the randomness of the share is just kind of like do something really interesting. So whenever I started making Union Station, it was based off of Erie Railroad. So one of the key features of Union Station is that the 5 different companies have different shares, different quantity of shares, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And you actually, at the beginning of the game, you have one out for each company that you auction off at the beginning of the game. But then all the other ones are shuffled face down, and they come out on this offer queue that progresses as the game goes on. So someone will perform a build action, they'll lay some track, and then another share will come out. Some people will buy a share, and then more shares come out. And then depending on how long the share is on the track, the value of that company will actually increase by 1, 2, or 3. So if it's on the track, if it's in the offer longer, then the companies are going to become more valuable. And so there's this interesting balance of, do I want to purchase the share now, or do I want to do something so that maybe the share will fall down but then also be worth more? Because whenever the value increases, it can also potentially trigger a dividend, which then is kind of that balance of, oh man, I'm 3 spots away from a dividend payout. So like if I buy it and it's only at a +2, then it's going to go up 2. Then like, how am I going to get it to that third one? Well, there are ways that you can build, whenever you build track and you enter into towns and cities and stuff, the value of your company increases.
Right.
But there's kind of like that weird balance of like, okay, I guess I'll build the track to increase the value of the company, but then the next person, they end up buying the share instead, which then causes a dividend payout, which then, splits your shares in half or into thirds or quarters or just whatever it is. And so that randomness of the offer queue of the different shares coming out makes for a really interesting game every single time that you're playing, because the track lay is pretty straightforward. There are only 12 cubes per company. That's it, right? And so there's not this wild Paris connection going in circles, marking off stuff.
The spirals to nowhere.
Spirals to nowhere, which is my favorite. The hate building that you can do.
Oh yeah.
But the interesting part about how Union Station works is that even though there are only 12 cubes, and you can only place 2 track per hex, the interesting thing is that because the map is so small, you still get in the way, and you can still block each other, intentionally or unintentionally. And so that's one aspect of it. But then how you build is going to affect the value of the company, which then could affect dividend payouts, which then could affect whether the game ends or not, which then could affect whether you want to buy one company versus another company in the offer track, right? And so there's just, it started off as a love letter to Erie Railroad, but this is going to sound bad because I love Erie. I wanted the decisions to matter a little more.
Yeah.
Over which one, which is not necessarily true, because Erie is just a wild ride anyways. But it's just, I like it. It's a fun, quirky little 30 to 45 minute game. It's 3 to 5 players, like most Cube Rails titles. It does well at 3. It does well at 5. No one's broken it yet, and I've played it probably 20 plus times with people on my own. It was pretty broken at first, but that's how most games.
Yeah, no, it was fun. It was fun to watch it kind of smooth out as it developed, and I appreciate it. What I love,
you got in on some of those early ones that were like, okay, this is
yeah, but you are literally trying to break it at that point, which is that's what I'm there for. What I find fun about this one versus a lot of other games is, rather than everybody trying to get to a single place, like instead of everybody trying to get to Chicago in 46 or get to the big revenue center, you're trying to get out from it, which I love how that just makes the game feel very different.
Yeah, so everybody starts in Chicago, and then the 5 companies have a different destination city they want to go to. 3 are going west, 2 are going east, and you get the value of your company increases based off of their DITs, towns that increase the value of your company by a couple. If you go into any city, it increases the value of your company by 3. But if you go to the actual destination city, it increases the value of your company by 5, but then it also stops the track lay of that company. So whether you drop all 12 to get there, or you drop 7 to get there, thus cutting off the rest of the revenue for your company, you can do that. And sometimes it's more advantageous to do the build, the long build, and sometimes it's more advantageous to just go straight across. And so they do kind of spiral out. But once again, because, and this is the wild thing about it, is that the first play, most people just kind of like go to the cities, and that's all they do. But what I love is whenever somebody whose destination city is east, they start building to the west. And I love that. And the reason why I love that is because, first of all, it's actually pretty smart, because there are more towns that you can hit on the west side of Chicago than on the east side of Chicago, right? So the value of your company can go up quicker. You might not hit that. You're probably not going to hit the destination city. It's probably not going to skyrocket, but it'll go up quicker. But then the other thing is that you're blocking all of the other companies that are going west from going west, and sometimes they're just stuck. One of the big differences between Union Station and Westward Rails is that Westward Rails is a game all about route building. It's all about route building and timing. You want to time your route build to trigger a dividend, to make the connections, to fulfill a demand, so that you can, so that the value of your company can just skyrocket. That's what you're doing in Westward Rails. In Union Station, the boring game is building. I didn't want it to be about building. I wanted it to be about manipulating the values of the company. That's what I wanted it to be. And that's what it is. It's about buying shares at the right time, which then triggers dividend payouts. And then building just kind of like helps push you into it a little bit, and that's really it. And so the most boring games of Union Station I've played are with people who all they want to do is lay track. And then you get to the end of it and you just kind of go, okay, that's fine. That's a game that we played. And honestly, that's boring. And if you, this is going to sound bad, if you want a game that you're all about laying track and building the most, like, the best routes possible, don't buy this game, because you're going to hate it. Because that's not what it's about, But if you like a game that's like, and it's not heavy economics, right? It's only like 30 or 45 minutes. And so if this is a game to where you're like, hey, I want to play around with a little bit of building, and I want to like play around a little bit with like the timing of like buying shares, and like maybe I do something silly, like maybe I sell off all my shares, because like that's an option of one of the actions you could do, is just drop the entire company and receive a massive payout for the company, but then it also lowers the value of the company right afterwards. You can do that. I'm not saying that that's the best decision, but it's a decision that you can make, and it might be good early in the game, and it might, shoot yourself in the foot at the end of the game, but it depends on how you play it.
Yeah, it's exciting. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a fun Christmas this year. Excellent.
Thanks.
Well, Travis, I think probably the best place to tell people to go would be what? Because if you got a lot of stuff, Twitter, just follow you there. So, what would they follow?
Yeah. There are a couple places. Twitter's probably going to be the easiest, because I am definitely the most active on Twitter. And you can follow me at Travis D Hill. I tweet a lot about coffee and atrocities in the world, and train games.
There you go.
RPGs and my dog and cat, and that's really about it. But you can also find me at Presspot Games. That's kind of the moniker that I've used for card rails, for anything else that I put out, RPGs. It's all Presspot Games, and so that's presspot.games. You can go there, and obviously that's like where all my rulebook editing stuff is as well. Not that I'm doing a whole lot of that right now because giant, this stuff's taking up a lot of time. I'm not doing as much rulebook editing, but you can go to presspot.games. You can find RPGs, RPG zines, and you can find info about train games as they come out. And yeah, that's really about it. Travis
Excellent.
D. Hill and presspot.games.
All right, so we'll look for Union Station and then also Westward Rails coming this fall. Awesome. Thanks for spending a little time with me today. I appreciate it. And I'm sad Tony wasn't here, but we'll get back to the conversation and he can chime in. All right, so through the magic of editing, Travis was awesome. And, I'm still here with Tony, though. And we are going to bring up our gray phase. And this is when we usually talk about our feelings. So this is kind of when we're going to talk about how do we feel about Kickstarter? How do we feel about all these things and pre-orders and all that? And what is this going to bring to the hobby as a whole? It's kind of exciting. So I'm going to lead off with you, Tony. What are some of your feelings about the whole, yes, we have a horse in the race. I get that. But at the same time, overall, what are your feelings towards like crowdfunding and all that?
I love it. As I said before, right, it is a way that the consumers can vote with their dollars and bring projects to life that might otherwise have not come to life due to a lack of capital, right?
Right.
And so, hey, if you've got a good idea, bring it to the marketplace. If the market thinks it's a good idea, it's going to happen. If the market doesn't think it's a good idea, go figure out why, come back again, right? Like, I think that's a very, very good thing. Hopefully, hopefully I'll feel that same way at the end of August. But so far, man, all of my interactions with Kickstarter and the application and everything have been really pretty phenomenal. It's very, very comfortable, very easy to do.
Right. And, I'm one of those people who I love Kickstarter for the core of what it's designed to do, and that's help a thing get published that might not otherwise come to market. And whether that's, a big game company taking a risk on a huge project, or whether it's somebody running a small, magazine like we are, I love that this is a platform that we can do it on. And I think it really makes sense. I think it's super helpful. It's super clear, straightforward. I think it's pretty ubiquitous. It kind of knocks down the borders a little bit and makes it a little more able to be, distributed on a wider scale rather than just at Trax events, which is what this could have ended up being without it, right? It just very well could have been, hey, we're going to print up 50 copies for Trax at the next event, and that's it. And then, all of us who don't live in Denver or couldn't make it or can't get out there, wouldn't be able to enjoy all the work and effort that's gone into projects like this. So,
sure, man.
Yeah, I'm super excited. Union Station is going to be a lot of fun. I've played it. I've heard other podcasts. Oh. Yeah, other podcasts have maybe felt different way about it. I'm not going to name names. And that's fine, but I love it for what it is. I think it's Travis in our interview, he kind of talked a little bit about comparing it to Erie, which is, it's a little, yeah, it's got a little of the craziness and the shares coming out and things. So I kind of really like it for what it is. It's that cube rail game that doesn't take itself so super seriously. And I always enjoy that, especially in a intermezzo game, like, you're waiting for somebody to finish and somebody to start, it's going to be, I'm going to be really happy with it right in that vein. I'm excited.
No, it's good to have games out there that are like vehicles for different mechanics.
Right. Like if I just burn my brain on 17 and then I'm going to go play another game of something big later at night, having something in the middle where the stakes might not all be on me. It might be a little looser, a little faster, a little funner. I love that.
Not every game's going to appeal to everybody all
Right.
the time, so it's good to have that variety and exploration, really, right?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm super excited about that one. The Westward Rails is going to be interesting. That one actually is coming out by Hollandspiel. Yeah, he basically was demoing that. He talked about it in his interview, and I apologize if I'm rehashing. Tony hasn't heard it yet. But kind of inadvertently demoed it for one of the heads of Hollandspiel, and it actually got produced. So,
No way.
yeah, so they just, we want to pick
Go
this
Travis.
up, right? And after the fact, I'll leave Travis the big news, but if you enjoyed Card Rails, or you want a copy of it, I don't think the man is done with that system yet. I don't think so.
Okay. I just took Card Rails to the mountains on our 4-day Trax narrow gauge, where it was just the Trax guys up in the mountains playing board or train games for 4 days.
Yeah, good stuff. And again, it fits that nice little easy breezy. I don't want to dump a ton of time into a game or setup or whatever. It's a great, one of the reasons we have desserts as humans is because sweetness actually shuts down. Well, it should shut down kind of your appetite center if it's done right. It's why dark chocolate and those things will kind of stop the process a little bit. Your brain kind of says, okay, we're done now. That's kind of the way I feel about a game like that. It's just kind of, when I play with my friends, it's the crew. That's the one that I kind of go, okay, we're shutting down. I'm done now. I kind of feel that way about these. They're just nice enders and make me happy. It's just a nice ease out rather than a cold stop.
All right.
I'm talking about food a lot tonight.
I think of palate cleansers too, right? Like, okay, now I'm ready for this, and now I'm ready for that.
Exactly. It's good. It's good for your brain to do different things, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. So that's pretty much, that's it. That's what we got for y'all. We're excited to bring you Hiawatha's. It has been a fun project to be involved with, and I cannot wait to get a copy in my hands and see some of that work come to life and play some of those games. Well, thank you all very much for this episode. This has been a lot of fun. We'll be back to normal next month, which also is our 2-year anniversary. 2 years, Tony. 2 years.
No.
So I'm excited.
Happy anniversary, baby.
Yeah. I mean,
I have my wheel tapping president certificate right here at all times.
That's
yours
excellent.
Yours are on your desk. What kind of company is this? It's got 2 president certificates. What the?
Who says there's 2? I might have just dumped it on you.
Oh my God.
And with that,
we still have a train, so I'm good.
It's got a permanent 2. That's all. That's it. It's a 2. It's a 1 local. It's even worse. Awesome. Well, thank you, everybody. We hope you come out and enjoy the Kickstarter and support some great publishers and other things in the coming year. Whether we talked about you or not, know that your game is loved and appreciated, and we love everybody who contributes. And certainly look forward to you getting this magazine in your hand, Card Rails in your hand, Union Pacific, whatever in your hands. Just get out there and play games. We can do it now. It's exciting. Well, hopefully you can do it.
Right.
Hopefully you can. So game responsibly, have a great one, and we'll see you in September. Thanks for joining us this month. Be sure to tune in next month to see what shenanigans Tony and I will get ourselves into. Tony and I would like to give a special shout out to all the patrons who support the show. Thank you for listening, supporting, and taking care of us. You can also help us out if you want a shirt. Be sure to check us out on Teespring.
Westward Media,
where we all
bring something
to the table.
pull up a chair.